Hi folks, welcome to ZAPCon 2022. If it's your first time here, it's great to see you. If it's the second time for you, welcome back. So my name's Simon Bennetts and I'm here to talk about the state of ZAP. So for those of you who don't know, I am the ZAP founder and project lead. I started off as a Java developer, but after a pen test, one of my applications didn't go as well as planned, and I found out I need to learn a lot more about security. I started learning about the OWASP top 10, but I'm a developer. I like playing around with tools, and I learn best when I'm actually trying things out. So I decided I wanted to play around with open source web security tools and learn that way. I was kind of surprised to find out there weren't any well-maintained web application security tools at that time. I wanted to join an active community and there wasn't one. So in the end, I actually released ZAP to try and create the community that I wanted to join. And that's still what ZAP is. It's a community-focused tool, and we really want people to join in and contribute. And that's what you're doing by attending this conference. I was at Mozilla for a while, but a couple of years ago, or nearly 2 years ago now, I joined StackHawk, where I've been able to spend all of my time on ZAP, which has been great. So session content, what I'm going to be talking about is what happened last year, then the stats of ZAP, and what's coming up next year. So without further ado, I'll just go straight into it. So what happened in the last year? Well, when I did this session last year, one of the main things we talked about was the automation framework. We released the automation framework at ZAPCon last year, and since then, a lot more work has gone into it. When it was released, it was alpha quality, and now it is beta quality, hopefully getting towards release quality. But we know people are using it right now, and it is a very good option for a lot of you. And you'll see why we're focusing on something like the automation framework when I come to the stats. So what I'm going to do is I am going to switch over to I'm going to go to the real website to start with, and we will see on the ZAP marketplace, we've got the automation framework, and you can see it's beta quality, and we have a look down here. There's lots of help here. It explains how you can use it, and it will show you a set of jobs, and actually those are the ones just provided by the add-on. But if we go to the website, we'll see there's a whole set of different jobs. So these jobs are the ones that allow you to do things within the automation framework. So you can run the active scanner, you can import GraphQL, OpenAPI definitions, import SOAP, you can run the spiders, there's all sorts of things in there. And it's really focused on making it as easy as possible to automate ZAP in a very flexible way. And in addition to all of these jobs that are available via YAML, we now have a user interface. So we actually have access to it in the desktop. This seems a bit strange. Why would you want to access an automation framework in the desktop UI? But the idea is we always say that it's really good. It's easier to configure ZAP via the desktop UI. You can see what's going on. You can play around with things. And because the automation framework is something you actually want to set up and prove it works first, what you can do is you can set it up in the UI, then you can export it, and then you can be sure that it will work. So if I just switch over to ZAP, as you can see, it's still saying the schedule is now live because we're recording this in advance. But what you will find is there is this automation tab if you've got the automation framework installed. And what you can do is you can create automation plans from within ZAP. And what it'll do, it will actually inherit all of the information from the context. So if you define context and all the authentication and all the other things to do with how your application is configured, then those will go into the automation framework plan. And you can see you can choose all of the jobs. So we can actually just select a profile. We have a whole set of jobs already added, and we can go in and we can actually edit any of those. So we can double click and we can change all of these things. We've got advanced options for all of them. So there's a huge amount that you can do via the automation framework, and you can configure most of it via the UI. This makes it very powerful. And something that a direction we think is a really good way to go if you want to automate ZAP. So that was the automation framework. As you'll see, we've made loads of changes to it. It supports a lot more than it did before. But that's not the only thing that happened last year. One of the other things was the reporting competition. So at ZAPCon again, we released the reporting add-on, and this is something that's been requested a lot, or was requested a lot before the conference, because we knew that the ZAP reports were they were kind of basic, and they were not very flexible. And so what we did is we added a new reporting add-on, which was available and made it much easier to configure, to create reports and switch between them. We also announced a reporting competition to try and get some of the best reports, get better reports into the ZAP reporting add-on. And so that completed, and we did have some winners. So what I'll do is I will just switch back to the website. And if we go back to the marketplace and look for the reporting add-on, you'll see the report generation is now release quality. And if you go into the help, and this help is available in ZAP as well, but we got it online here, you will see we actually now have, if I scroll down to the bottom, the templates. We have details of all the templates currently available. So you can see we've got a large number of templates. Some of them are traditional ones with additional information like requests and responses, but other ones are completely new. So things like the high-level report sample, this is one of the ones that was a competition winner. And we go in, you'll actually see details of the sections that are supported and a screenshot of what the actual report looks like, so you can get an idea of what it's like before you try it out. The modern HTML report with themes and options, there's another new one, and one that came through the competition. You can see we've got this one supports sections, so you can choose what you actually want to include, and it's got themes. There's a whole load of different themes, so you can change the colors and see what it looks like. And again, we've got a screenshot showing you what it actually looks like. And finally, we've got another one which won the competition, and this is the risk and confidence HTML report. And this has got a large number of sections, which you can see here, and then a screenshot showing you a whole selection of the information that's available. We do show you what the other reports look like. So you can see they're a bit more basic, but also things like JSON reports, so you can see what the format is, and the XML report, we've got the information there as well. So the help actually shows you a lot of information, and you can see what these reports look like before you try them out. And remember, it's very easy to create your own reports. And if you create any reports that you think work well, then please submit them to us. We'd love to include them with ZAP as standard. Next change I want to talk about is the out-of-band testing from Google Summer of Code. Actually, I'm not going to say a huge amount about this because Akshat has already done a session on it, going into a great detail. All I can say is that, all I'm going to say is that this is something that's been really great to see happen. It's something that ZAP couldn't actually test for before. So this is where we're testing for vulnerabilities where we don't get a response directly back from the target application, but we can trick the target application to calling a third service. And so we now support that in ZAP. Akshat's done a great job. If you want to learn more about that, then, well, if you've missed his talk, you can see it in the recordings. And talking of Google Summer of Code, we had another project which is very successful as well, which is the retesting project and retesting add-on. And what this allows you to do, allows you to run a scan and then choose particular alerts that you want to be able to retest. And that will then create an automation framework plan, which will run very quickly. The problem this is designed to solve is that when you have you run a ZAP scan, this can take some time. It could take half an hour, it could take several hours. And what happens if your developers, you or your developers fix a particular problem and you want to see whether they fixed it? You don't want to have to go back and run a full ZAP scan just to find that out. With the retesting add-on, you can just highlight those alerts you want to retest, create a plan, and then that plan will run in seconds. So this makes retesting vulnerabilities very quick and very efficient. Another big thing, we've actually made quite a lot of changes to the documentation. One of the ones I want to call out is the contribution guidelines. We actually made a lot of changes to the documentation, but one of the ones I want to talk about in particular is contribution guidelines. So I'll just switch back to ZAP proxy. And then if we go to the documentation, you'll see the contributing guide. Now, what we've got here is a significant amount of detail on how you can contribute to ZAP. I'm not going to go through this in all today, but I am running a session tomorrow, a workshop on contributing to ZAP, and this will prove the basis of everything I talk about. So if you want to have a look at it, contributing, if you want to know how to contribute to ZAP, then this is the place to go. One thing I will mention is we do have some extra documentation down here. We're working on documenting how you can authenticate to ZAP. There's a lot of documentation around, but it's split in different places. So we're focusing on, we've got one section just on authentication. As you'll see, it's work in progress. But if you're having problems with authenticating with ZAP, then this is the place to go. Another very big change, which has actually been merged recently, is networking phase 1. For those of you who don't know, the ZAP networking layer has been around for a very long time, since Paros days, in fact, and it's been causing a lot of problems. There's a lot of things we haven't been able to do, and we can't actually support modern protocols. So for a long time, we've wanted to replace this networking layer, and finally, we've actually been able to do so. So this is work in progress. It's something Ricardo's been working on for a while now, and phase 1 has been completed, which is great because we now, whenever you're communicating between a browser, the client, a browser, and ZAP, all that communication will be using a new networking library called Netty. So there's a modern library, a third-party library, which is very well supported. So this is really great because it's the first stage, which means the ZAP networking layer is actually being brought up to date. There are more changes planned, which I will talk about later. And the last thing I want to talk about is telemetry. So as some of you may know, we added telemetry to ZAP. We've made sure that this is all very well documented. You can turn it off very easily. You can actually see whatever telemetry is sent to our servers via ZAP. And we make sure that we don't include any information which could identify anyone or the applications that you're attacking. But what it does, it gives us a lot more information that we did not have before. And what we want to do is we're starting to make use of it, and we want to publish more of it and tell you what's going on. Which leads me very nicely into the next section, which is the stats of ZAP. And these are the stats which we have started collecting from telemetry and things like the news service and the check for update service. And for this, I'm going to switch back, but I won't actually go to the ZAP website. I'm going to go to my local copy. So what the plan is by the time you listen to this talk, these statistics will be live on the ZAP website. They're not live there now because I'm recording this in advance, and we're actually recording this in February. So what we're going to do is we are going to publish these statistics on the ZAP website every month. Because it's February, the last full month we have is January. So what you'll see here is some headline statistics. So ZAP was started 900,000 times in January, and nearly 500,000 active scans, nearly 300 million alerts raised, and 750,000 active scan messages were sent. These are just headline figures. They just kind of give you an idea of what's going on and the fact that ZAP is being used a lot. But we have more statistics than that. So the first one is the bar charts. Now, these are actually the statistics that are already available on the ZAP website. And they've been there for some time. So what we show you is the check for updates. And you'll see that there were just over 1 million check for updates in January. and you can actually see what all of the different versions were. And we scroll down, you'll see direct downloads, and last month 100,000 direct downloads, which is a record for us. Partly, and that's almost certainly due to releasing 2.11.1. We can actually see that it's massive changeover. So 2.11 is hardly anyone's downloading it now, which is good, because we know there are problems with it, and a lot of people have now switched over to, nearly everyone switched over to 2.11.1, which is great to see. We also have the number of Docker pulls, and you can see the difference between live, stable, weekly, and bare. And as you can see, it changes a lot over time. At one stage, we had 15 million. Well, actually, there's something like 18 million Docker pulls in 1 month, whereas now we're down to just a couple of million. We don't know why it varies so much, but this is due to people automate ZAP, and they do automate it in different ways. We also show you the number of messages and threads on the user group, but these are all stats that have been available for quite some time. What we have is a new set of pie charts. So what these are doing is they're showing you some of the new data that we've got. And the first one is the number of pings by country. So these news pings. So whenever ZAP starts up, unless you tell it not to, it will make one of these news pings to find out if there is any news items. And what you can see is that the US is by far and away the biggest, highest number of ZAP instances run in the US, followed by Germany, followed by Ireland and India. However, what we've done is we've got another way of looking at this, and that is desktop news pings by country. The reason we're measuring this and telling this as well is because we suspect that cloud services and cloud and software as a service offerings are really skewing these figures. We think that a lot of these ZAP instances in the US and Germany are actually running on cloud providers. And that's borne out when we have a look at the desktop news pings by country. You can see that the US is still ahead, but it's only a little bit ahead of India, followed by Great Britain, Japan, and Germany. So you can see the spread of where ZAP is used is quite wide. And based on the stats we've got, it looks like ZAP is used in pretty much every country around the world. Next up, news pings by operating system. And Linux is by far and away ahead of anything else, followed by Windows, followed by Kali. And again, we think this is very much skewed by automation and running in cloud services, particularly automation, because pretty much everyone seems to automate ZAP in Linux. So again, we've got the same data, but this time just the desktop ones. And we can see here that now that desktop ZAP, most people run on Windows, followed by Kali, followed by Linux, and followed by Mac OS. This is more what we're expecting. We always thought that a lot more people used ZAP on Windows, the ZAP desktop on Windows, than Linux or Mac OS. To me, the surprise was Kali. I didn't expect it to be used as much, and I actually thought we'd have more users on Mac OS. So it just goes to show, that's why these kind of things are very useful to us, this kind of knowledge. Then we have news pings by ZAP run type, and you can see that the most people run the ZAP daemon, followed by the command line and followed by a desktop. This tells us that ZAP is used in automation. The daemon and the command line are ways to automate ZAP, and we suspect the command line is as a result of the automation framework. So if you're wondering why we have the focus on things like the automation framework and automation, this is the reason. By far and away, the most ZAP is used is in automation, with the desktop coming quite a way behind. Then we've got news pings by container. And I suppose not too surprisingly, we find that ZAP is mostly not running any container at all. But then the container that's used most is the Docker stable image, which really isn't a surprise. But the next one is the ZAP live, Docker live image, which was a surprise to me. I assumed that the weekly would be used more, but it turns out that the live one is used more. I did not expect that at all. So those are the kind of charts that we are making available now. And we've got a couple more sets of statistics. First one is the top ZAP add-ons last month. So these are the most frequently optional add-ons that were installed last month. And what you'll see is that right now in January, the import-export add-on was installed more than anything else, which was a surprise, particularly as it's alpha status. However, it has replaced a couple of existing add-ons, and this is proving pretty stable, so we really ought to promote that to beta. In fact, by the time you watch this, it may well be beta. It will be interesting to see how this list changes over time. What we see here is the passive scan rules and the active scan rules beta are two of the most popular add-ons to install. This is not a surprise at all. The port scanner, active scan, plug and hack, and sequence add-ons, they're a surprise. Now, one thing it's worth pointing out is this is the add-ons that are installed. It doesn't necessarily mean they're the ones being used. So it's quite possible that these figures are being skewed by automation frameworks that are pulling these things and not making use of them. We're not sure about that, so we need to dig into these figures more. But at least it gives you an idea of the kind of add-ons that people are installing. And the last one is something which hopefully you will find very interesting. And it's the kind of thing we want to publicize more data like this. And this is the number of, so the add-ons which are most frequently flagged as false positives using alert filters. So a caveat, we don't know whether these are false positives or not. And it's quite possible they are not false positive. It's just people aren't so interested in these specific vulnerabilities. But you can see timestamp disclosure was the top one, followed by X content type options and all the rest. This is very interesting for us because it means we can start looking at these and saying, well, is there a problem with them? What do we need to do? And it's also useful for you because it will give you an idea of the kind of things that people might be having problems with or less interested in. One thing I'll point out is that these are all links. So this will actually take you to details of the particular alert. And we can actually then go to the code if we want. And interestingly, what we can also do is if we go back up to the add-on level, we can have a look at the changelog. And it so happens, if we have a look at the latest changes, which are unreleased, we've addressed a false positive condition for timestamp disclosure. So whether that will impact the number of times it's flagged as false positive, we don't know. But those are the kind of things we can start to see. And we can see that when it appears people have problems with particular scan rules, and we can try and do something about it. So those are the stats we've got at the moment. We are thinking of, there's other stats we could, we're going to look at publishing things like how long on average scan rules run. That kind of information we think you'd find useful. But what we want you to do is we want you to tell us what you would like to see. So get in touch, and if we can make this information public, we will do so. We're finding this information very useful. It will change how we're actually going to, what we're going to do with ZAP and what we look at and what we focus on. But we also want you to tell us what you would like to know about how ZAP is being used around the world. So that's with stats of ZAP. And last but not least is what's coming up. So what is coming up? We are going to do a new release, ZAP 2.12.0. Hopefully this won't be a surprise. I'm not going to give you a date. I've done that before and we always seem to overrun, but this is something that we're certainly going to hope it's going to be sooner rather than later. What's going to be in it? Well, one of the main things is networking changes. So I mentioned that we've already had phase 1, which is merged, and there's a lot more to do on the networking side. But what we're really aiming for is there are 2 key things. One is being able to handle HTTP1 malformed requests. Right now, our current networking layer doesn't allow us to do this. And that means there are certain attacks, like attacks on host headers, which we can't do because the networking layer won't allow us to. The networking changes that have been put in place will allow that to happen, but they have to be implemented. another key thing is HTTP2 support. I know a lot of you will be looking forward to that. And these are the kind of things I certainly hope we'll be getting into ZAP 2.12. So the timing of ZAP 2.12 will depend on how these changes go on. We will definitely be focusing more on the automation framework. We're going to be carrying on making sure this is the best way to automate ZAP. I mentioned that you can actually handle, can't remember if I mentioned or not, but you can actually handle all of ZAP authentication mechanisms in the automation framework. And by the time you watch this, you should be able to run any script and do all of the script handling that you need to do in the automation framework as well. There's a PR outstanding, which hopefully will be merged by the time you see this. As Akshat will have told you, there's more improvements planned on the out-of-band testing. So that's something to look forward to. Both the OAST and the out-of-band stuff and the automation framework, because they're add-ons, these can be released independently of ZAP 2.12. The networking phases, even though we've got a new networking add-on, there's so many, it's so tied into the core, you won't get most of the benefits until we do a new release. And of course, we've got Google Summer of Code again this year. Now, right now, we don't know whether OWASP will be selected to take part in Google Summer of Code. We're certainly hoping it is. We've got some students actually interested in ZAP and fixing some bugs, getting used to the ZAP code base. So this is something that we're really hoping it will take part in, and we're hoping some great great features will come out of that. So those are the kind of things that are coming up. We do have other things planned. I'm not going to tell you about them just yet. You may have heard about some of them if you're on the dev group and things like that. But what we try to do is we try to be very flexible. So if things change, we will change, and we may make some changes very quickly, add new features if something becomes really important to people. So, you're going to have to wait and see for some of these things. But we will try and make sure that we keep on making ZAP as good as possible for you. And last but definitely not least, Joni will have told you about the StackHawk Fund. This is something we're very excited about, and we think this will really ensure that a lot more people get involved in ZAP and really improve a whole range of features, including scan rules and a whole load of other things. So that's all I'm going to tell you about. I said there is more coming, but for that you'll have to wait and see. That's all from me. Thank you very much for watching, and please come over to the relevant channel in Discord if you want to ask me any questions or just have a chat. Thank you very much.
Simon!
Hey, Scott, how you doing?
I'm super good. How are you?
Oh, very good, thank you. The conference is going great. Yes,
so good so far. I really enjoy all the content, and thank you for your content. Yeah, lots of information about live presentations in the chat right now, because you had to preload some of your talk, but at the same time, the presentation worked perfectly. All right, here we go. Once again, thank you for your time, your effort that you put into all the work that around ZAP, around your presentation, and around the community. It's super appreciated by everyone that's enjoying ZAPCon, I'm sure.
Pleasure. And I mean, again, I have to thank StackHawk for giving me this opportunity. I'm able to focus on ZAP 100% now I'm here, and that's just made such a huge difference.
Yeah, great. Simon, I have a couple questions for you, a couple questions in the Discord chat. And then if you have more questions, you're watching live, ask more questions. I'll ask Simon. Real life Simon hasn't been taken over by ZapBot yet. First of all, the first question was, is the new reporting going to be used in the standard scan scripts in the Docker image?
Well, you can use them right now, but you'd have to use the automation framework. So we've got different ways of automating ZAP. We've got the package scans, which is probably what's being referred to. The package scans are tricky because they're a little bit tricky to extend. They haven't proven that easy to maintain, and that's one reason why we're moving towards the automation framework. And if you're running the baseline scan right now with standard options, you're actually using the automation framework. The plan is to actually migrate them all to use automation framework, but keep the package scans as a kind of easier way and for backwards compatibility. But if you want to use the new reports in automation, then go straight to the automation framework. It should support pretty much everything you need right now.
Awesome. And I know you did ZAP deep dive on automation framework that's posted on the StackHawk YouTube. Time for a refresh?
Almost certainly, yeah. There's been so much going on. You need to do it. I mean, we haven't done one for a while, have we? But definitely should start those up, and we've got lots more to cover.
Awesome. Hey, I got a question for you about stats. I know this is something that we worked on pretty hard and tried to make it sane so that we weren't pulling, ZAP wasn't pulling in information people were sensitive about, but it seems like there's a lot of really valuable to the core team information in there and valuable to ZAP users as well to help them on their journey of how to use ZAP and how to roll out ZAP. When you started looking at those stats, what was one of them that surprised you the most? One thing that was like, what? I had no idea.
Oh, good question. I mean, I was surprised by the fact that more people were using ZAP Desktop on Linux and Kali than on Mac OS. That was a surprise. I didn't expect that. I'm also surprised by the add-ons that people have got installed. There's quite a few old ones there that we didn't think were being used. Now, that's just the ones that are being installed. And because we know ZAP is used in automation, it's quite possible that a whole load of these are being pulled in and not being used. So we need to kind of delve into those. We've added stats to a whole load of things like the OAST add-ons, some of the newer add-ons and import-export. We've added stats for those. We haven't gone back and added stats for some of the older add-ons, and maybe we should do to find out, are people actually using these things? Because it's quite possible there's some add-ons that people are using and they're just doing the job and people aren't complaining about them. It's only when people start complaining or asking for new features, that's when we hear about things. But it's quite possible there's some which people are just using day in, day out, no problems at all. But if we knew that, then we'd actually, focus on them a bit more, keep on improving them, try and make things better. So it's really helping us focus on, what people are using and what's important to people.
Yeah, awesome. I really like how transparent the whole thing is to help people understand what's getting collected and how that information is being used to drive roadmap and all that good stuff. Got a question. People were asking why Linux and Kali were separate in the stats. To give us some insight into why those things got separated out and they're not just one giant Linux bucket.
This is just because we wanted to know. So we know there are a set of security distributions, and where possible, we try and detect those. Now, our detection is very sophisticated, particularly for things like Docker images, because I think Docker have done quite a lot to make it hard to detect you running Docker. It's quite simple for us. In Docker, in our Docker images, we have a file which tells you which Docker image you're in. So we're not being sophisticated about this. We're not trying to see if people are trying to trick us or something. We just want to get a rough idea of how people are using ZAP and which containers they're using and which ones we need to focus on. So we put Kali detection in there because we wanted to know, and because we do have some separate code in there. I think we turn off the check for updates or something. There's some update thing because Kali have their own mechanism. Excuse me. But yeah, we definitely want to know which different types of distributions people are using so we can make sure ZAP works as well as possible in them.
Awesome. Lots of chat in the Discord. If there's a Half-Life logo in your background.
Yes, there is.
Well, see,
CD
Half-Life confirmed.
That is actually a CD. Yeah. The reason I got that out is because I wanted to play it on the Quest. So you can play Half-Life on the Quest. It's brilliant.
There you go. It's not only ZAP info in the ZAPCon. It's
exactly.
Half-Life info. All kinds of good stuff. Simon, we've got 5 minutes. If you have a question for Simon in the Discord, drop it into the Discord chat. Question for Simon. I'll ask him. Real Simon here. Simon, what one thing that you can tell us about are you the most excited about for ZAP plans?
It's probably going to have to be the networking changes. This is something we've wanted for, I think the original issue was raised about 8 years ago or something. And it's just something we've not been able to focus on. And Ricardo's been looking at now. He's done the first phase, which was sponsored by StackHawk as well. So another shout out there to, this. It's been made this possible, and we've had so many requests for supporting modern protocols like HTTP2, and also to be able to cope with some of the attacks, things like attacking host headers, which the current networking library we use doesn't support. So there's been big changes already. Hopefully you just won't have noticed them because everything will have stayed the same, but a lot's changing under the covers, and more will come. So that's it's not one of the big flashy things, but I think that's really important.
Yeah, I'm super excited about that one too, and I want to personally thank Ricardo on stream here during ZAPCon for merging those changes and getting them done. I know they were a lot of work. Any idea if there's benchmark performance improvements because of the networking layer at this point?
We haven't done any tests, but then it's not going to get worse, and we expect it to get better.
Awesome.
But no promises, but should get better.
Yeah, fair enough. There's one last question. Somebody said there's a lot of things. Where do I start if you're new to ZAP, both API and web application testing?
It kind of depends how you learn best. We've got loads of videos, so go to zaproxy.org and loads of videos there. We've got all of them. They're indexed, and we've got the ZAP in 10. We've got the ZAP deep dive. But it depends how you learn best. I learn best by playing with things. So I would recommend, for me, I got started by playing around with Paros, which we forked ZAP from eventually.
Mm-hmm.
So just play around with it, playing around with some deliberately vulnerable applications, something like OWASP Juice Shop, or any of the other. There's another OWASP project which just tracks vulnerable applications. Play around. If you're a developer and you've got your own applications, try the ZAP desktop against your own applications. See what happens. See what it tells you. You can use ZAP as a debugging tool. I used to do that with JavaScript requests, so you can see what's going on, change things on the fly, so you don't have to recompile your application or anything like that. So my recommendation is play around, but that's how I work best. But if you like learning from videos, then we've got loads of those as well. And if we haven't got the videos you want, then just let us know, because we want to record them.
Awesome. That's all the time we got for now, Simon. Thank you so much once again for your time and all the effort you put into ZAP and ZAPCon and the ZAP community and all the things you do for the tool.
It's a pleasure. It really is a pleasure. It's great fun.
All right, Simon. Have a good day. Enjoy the rest of ZAPCon.
You too. I will. See you.